we're not crazy for wanting to have a sustainable planet for a very long time and wanting to preserve it. And we can present ideas and ways to preserve it just in a way that's received well. So I think part of our responsibility as people who want to be pioneers for the environment is learning to communicate how we do that and knowing who our audience is.
Ooh, that's such a good point. So we need to really think about how we communicate with
It's
people
just like
and
with
not just,
anybody, like
yeah.
you, even just in personal relationships, you.
This episode of Grounded in Maine is sponsored by ESG Review. ESG Review magazine is published quarterly in February, May, August, and November, and is available for free in print and digital formats. ESG Review is devoted to environmental, social, and governance strategies, technologies, and investments. ESGreview.net is updated every Wednesday with 8 new stories and is home to feature articles, news items, and more. Visit esgreview.net to stay informed and help us spark the collaboration and awareness needed to develop sustainable economies and communities around the world.
There's a place where there's no trouble, no more pain, no more struggle.
Grounded in Maine podcast is an open conversation about how we show up for the world. I started this podcast out of a desire to learn new ways to be sustainable because the word sustainability is big. It can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to learn, different ways to try to be part of the solution and not feel like it's too late. So I'm talking to people who are doing different things and learning so much. I hope you are too. All right, you guys, just a quick note. I am speaking with Kenya Rothstein, and she gave me so many great nuggets I literally was writing things down, which is, I don't know. Is it lame? Maybe not. But I was literally writing down ideas because she was just like handing them to me. But so if you guys get something out of this and you think that somebody that you know would also get something out of it, please share it with them. And, save this episode to go back to and, take notes, unlike me. But I hope that you guys really enjoy this. I am so inspired and fired up by this conversation. And I am so glad that you were here for it. I hope that you have an awesome week. I will talk to you soon. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy Fagan, and my guest today is Kenya Rothstein. Kenya she's an environmental attorney, and she also has a podcast. But I want to start out talking about your day job, Kenya. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, so I always say I'm an environmental attorney by day and podcaster by night, even though I don't always podcast at night, but that's how the saying goes.
Tonight we're podcasting by night.
Yeah. And yeah, so I'm an environmental attorney. I always knew I wanted to work in the environmental field. I always felt very passionate about environmental protection. So even before going to law school, I knew this is the field that I wanted to work in. And so I'm very grateful that I was able to land a job after law school in the environmental field because it was definitely not easy. I will tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely ties into my podcast. Actually, thank you for saying no, because when I was graduating law school, I got a lot of rejections and I really wanted to work specifically in Washington, D.C., but that route was just not working out in that time frame. And I just got a lot of rejections. And after every single no or every single nothing, which I took as a no, I just kept telling myself, one day I'll be really glad this isn't working out. One day I'll be saying thank you for saying no. So I ended up moving back to California, where I'm from. I was living in Miami at the time. I went to law school at the University of Miami. And so I moved back to California. And once I found a job in the environmental field, luckily, I was like, you know what? Thank you for saying no was a mantra that I just kept hearing in my head. I was like, this really feels like the rest of the world needs to hear about it. You know what I mean? And so I decided to start a podcast called Thank You for Saying No, where I interview people about rejection and no moments and just things not working out in a really big life-changing way, but how they're thankful for that because of what it taught them or what it led them to. And it's just been really great. I love how people connect with the show and how Thank You for Saying No is a mantra across all industries, including, environmental sustainability, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, in a little bit. So that's my background.
That's so cool. I mean, oh my gosh, if you had stayed in Florida, holy moly, you'd have your job cut out
A
for you.
lot of work to do.
But I'm sure that California is really open to what you're doing. Yeah.
California is a really good place to be an environmental attorney. There are a lot of good environmental laws here, and high good like laws about pollution or not polluting rather. So those are a lot better than Florida for sure. But Florida does have a good environmental practice too. Oh, sorry.
We just don't hear about it so much, I guess. But I'm sure, I mean, people definitely want to protect the ocean because that's their livelihood there. And Disney, but that's that's not environment. But I mean, it just seems like California would be super open to environmental causes. And then, I mean, Washington, D.C., that that just sounds really busy to me.
Yeah, Washington, D.C. is definitely busy. I think that's a good way to describe it. It's also the headquarters.
A lot of everything there.
Yeah. It's the headquarters for a lot of everything that goes on in the whole country. So it's a good place to work, but it's not the only place to work for sure. But actually, a fun fact is I just got barred in Washington, D.C. So I've been practicing now for a few years. And right when I got my California license, my legal license, I waved into the DC bar and it took a little bit. And so I actually just got barred in DC. So now I can get cases out there too. So we'll see how that journey goes. I'm still in the middle of it.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, it might happen after all.
Yeah, it'll definitely happen. I'm gonna make sure of it. I'm gonna make sure of it. But I will say I don't want to leave California. I love California. So if anything, I would be bi-coastal.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, that's so exciting. Congrats.
Thank you.
Yee. And so you mentioned Thank You for Saying No, which is your podcast name. And I'm curious, I mean, I've been listening to your podcast some, but I'm curious how, I mean, I guess it did come from your legal work, or school at least, after school that was with the rejections and stuff, and that ending up being a good thing. And that was the reason for the podcast?
Yeah, that's what made me start the podcast. It was, the more I talked to people about rejection in general and finding their, we call thank you for saying no moment, like their aha moment of like, wow, I'm so glad this thing didn't happen because it led me to this other thing. The more I talked about the concept of the show to friends and family, the more I was like, this needs to get further than just friends and family. I remember one day I was at Starbucks with my dad talking about the podcast, and this before I even launched it. And this random guy came up and was like, I relate to that concept. Just like random. I was like, if this is not a sign,
like just eavesdropping, and he was like, yeah, you should totally do that.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
It was so funny. But yeah, so that's what made me definitely start the podcast. And I feel like, Thank You for Saying No is a mantra that applies to so many different facets of life in different industries. So we've had, an actress, we've had actors, we've had comedians, we've had music producers, we've had other attorneys, we've had so many different people, other podcasters, like everyone in all of these different industries has experienced no and rejection and things not working out. And then an aha moment down the road where they're like, thank God that didn't happen, or they realize the resilience those no's give them. And I think this what I'm describing in this concept really ties into your show and environmental sustainability. And it's kind of like what we were talking about right before we recorded, how people can have such a negative connotation to environmental sustainability because they're like, oh, it can change my whole life, or it makes this more expensive, or it puts too much work on me, or companies always want to put it on the consumer. You know what I mean? So like it can feel really bogged down. But we can use this as a thank you for saying no moment where we don't have to see it as something negative. Instead, we can see it as an opportunity to be more sustainable, and we can figure out how to incorporate it into our lives in a way that doesn't feel negative. And it really doesn't have to be negative. Like, can you think of an example that might seem really hectic at first, but when you actually put it into practice, it's not that bad?
Well, I mean, not necessarily hectic, but just time consuming is like meal prep is one that this is fresh in my mind. I this past weekend I bought a crap ton of tomatoes. Because I was just buying out the farmer on their last market day, and I was like, oh, I'll make tomato jam. But I like quadrupled the recipe, and it took me about 5 hours to cook it down. And I was up until, almost 1 in the morning before going to work. But I was like, I do this to myself, but it's, stuff like that. Like, okay, I'm going to make all this stuff and it's going to be really great. And, it'll be great in a few months, but now I'm just like a zombie.
Yeah.
But
that is a good
totally
example
worth it.
of it being more hectic. I think another example could be people getting stressed out about recycling or composting, and because they don't understand what the difference is. I think sometimes in California too, we can take for granted that everywhere people know how to recycle and what's recyclable, what's compostable, what do the numbers mean, stuff like that. And so I think a big part of being environmentally sustainable is just understanding how to be it. And once you know the system, like a recycling system, it doesn't have to be as scary. And something else we were talking about before we recorded was not everywhere recycles, like not everywhere has the option to recycle. And I think that's where it can get really stressful too for people, is like, okay, well, I have all my bottles, but like, where do I put them now? And it's interesting because I went to this talk a couple months ago about this one woman. I think she's based in LA. And she talked about the power of just having a thought and executing it. Like, I know that sounds like, okay, duh, but like just the power that one person can have in making their impact. So I wish I could think of what she did. I know for like Uber Eats and like DoorDash, she created an option. She emailed and emailed and emailed, and she had a bunch of other people email and email and email them to have like a little ticker like on the app where if you want single-use plastic, you have to click it. Otherwise, the automatic option is no single-use plastic.
Ooh, I love that.
And so it decreased the amount of single-use plastic in California by so much. I wish I had the numbers off the top of my head, but it decreased just by, she had that thought and she was like, you know what? I'm just going to email the corporate, and she made it happen. And so it's like things like that, where if it doesn't feel accessible, like reach out to the powers that be, whoever they are, whether it's the government or an actual, corporation. And you'd be surprised. Like sometimes people just need, or companies or whatever, just need a little push. And maybe they didn't even think about it, because unfortunately, environmental sustainability isn't always at the forefront of businesses' minds or people's minds, or they don't understand the consumer aspect of it. They don't understand the day-to-day of things. So to the extent we are recognizing an issue and we have a solution, like speak up about it, because it could actually save billions of single-use plastic like this girl did. I don't know if it was billions, but then And she's done a few really big things like that where you just tell one or two people. And now we're in a Zoom world, like I'll help you email if you have an idea. Let
Right?
me know.
That's such a beautiful story. I mean, whatever, it just like when you think of when people are like, oh, I'm just one person, like what kind of difference can I make? And then you think of that person who is like, I'm
Yeah.
just going to send an email.
And
What
that
would
was
it hurt? And
right.
it actually made a difference. But so, and so you can't, we can, as one person, we can still make a difference. One person can tell one person, and then that person will tell one person, and
Hmm.
it just spreads. Uh,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be about money. It doesn't have to be, um, super complicated, just like you said.
Hmm.
And then also, like you were saying with the businesses, the larger businesses don't always know what's going on. And that's amazing that they actually like took that on and listened to what the consumers are asking, because I
Hmm.
like consumers are a lot of the time asking and they're just like, well, no, that's going to cost too much money.
Hmm.
Um, but that's amazing that they totally did that. I love
Yeah.
that.
That was like the no for her was being frustrated about all of this single-use plastic and wanting to be more environmentally sustainable, but probably being frustrated about how to do it. And the thank you was, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to turn this no into something positive. And so she reached out to the company and then it saved a bunch of plastic.
That's so awesome. I've never we don't have Uber where I live, and we didn't really have it where I lived before. So it's not something I've only used it a couple times. But that would be really cool when I go to a city again. I'll have to take a look and see if that is a thing.
Where is the closest recycling place to you? Is it really far? Like if you were to drive your recycling,
I have to drive my recycling. It's not picked up here.
but where, like how far is it?
15 minutes.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
But I remember I think it was last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago when I first started the podcast, like there was the whole thing about only 9% of plastic being actually recycled, which was just like that hurt so much.
I know.
Been recycling since the 80s, and I was like, how does this happen? How does this happen? And
Yeah.
it's the fact that there are so many different kinds of plastic,
Mm-hmm.
and all of them have the recycle symbol on them, but it's not all legit, which is so
Yeah.
sneaky and icky.
I know. The better option is to just eliminate plastic from your life as much as you can, which I know is really hard because it's literally in everything and it's everywhere. But, things like a reusable bottle
Hmm.
or like reusable forks, like reusable cutlery. So instead of using the single-use plastic cutlery, you just use reusable cutlery, or you can even recycle or reuse your single-use cutlery. You know what I mean? There's things you can do. Or if you're picking up food, like if people are listening from your area and they don't Uber but they go pick up their food, just say, "Oh, I don't need plastic forks or anything, or I don't need a straw if I'm just taking this to go," and then take it home and use your stuff. I mean, I know at my house we have a
Right.
big
I'm just
drawer.
going home. I don't need it.
Yeah.
I totally do that.
Yeah, and like you could encourage more people in your community to do that, or at restaurants have them have a sign. You know what I mean? That says cutlery upon request.
Ooh,
Like, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
you can take that same sort of one person can make a difference idea and implement it how it makes sense where you live.
Hmm. I'm writing that down. I don't know why this is like new information to me, which is really fun. But it's fine. Totally. I totally like, yeah, I mean, when you go to the restaurant and they give you the wrapped straw, I just leave the straw there. Like,
Mhm.
don't give me a straw. Yeah. Uh, I'm so glad we're doing this.
I know. I love brainstorming about how to be more sustainable.
Okay, awesome. And so, but you're in California and you must, I'm trying to think of the top of like cans and stuff. I don't drink anything other than water, so I don't. But California is one of the states that does, oh my gosh, you return bottles and cans, right? For
Yeah, they do have that system where you can return bottles and cans and get cash for it. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like five
Redeem.
cents.
That's the word.
Yeah, redeem. You can get, I think it's like 5 cents a bottle or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We do it. We did it in Maine too, but not here. Not here. Uh, I went to the recycling center yesterday, and my cousin was here last weekend, and I put all of the cans in the aluminum can recycling for
I love that
nothing,
you
for
do
no
that.
money. But I love that. That's such a great idea. And the little ideas are just so just like refusing that. I'm going home. I don't need plastic silverware, what plasticware,
Mhm.
plastic silverware. That's
Plastic
like,
cutlery, whatever it is. Yeah, and I think people are more responsive to new ideas about sustainability, like environmental sustainability, when you present it in a way that makes sense for them. So if you're talking to a business or a restaurant owner, you can say it could save them money. Like it would be better for the environment and it could save you money because you wouldn't have to buy all these cutleries that you're giving away for free, or I'm sure it's included in their business model somehow. But like you can explain how it would save them money at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And so
yeah,
depending who you're talking to, talk in their language in a way that makes sense to them because oftentimes if we're really passionate about something, and especially people who are passionate about the environment, I'm I've done this as well, as you can come off like aggressive or
yeah,
like too much, and people can't receive that. And so especially
right. It's
talking
like a
about,
shutdown.
yeah, people shut down because they're like, they immediately get defensive or
Don't
they
tell me how to
dismiss
run my
you.
business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or like, this is just a crazy environmentalist kind of thing. And but we're not crazy for wanting to have a sustainable planet for a very long time and wanting to preserve it. And we can present ideas and ways to preserve it just in a way that's received well. So I think part of our responsibility as people who want to be pioneers for the environment is learning to communicate how we do that and knowing who our audience is.
Ooh, that's such a good point. So we need to really think about how we communicate with
It's
people
just like
and
with
not just,
anybody. Like
yeah,
you, even just in personal relationships, you wouldn't like how I communicate to my mom is different than how I communicate to my dad, which is different than how I communicate to a partner at a firm, which is different than how I communicate to my best friend. It's, you know
right.
what I mean? Everyone receives information differently.
Yeah.
And we have to do the same thing when we're talking about environmental sustainability.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially, I mean, talking to businesses, like talk their language,
Mm-hmm.
not just like preach what you know, but say it in a way that it will be received, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. What other tips do you have, Ms. Environmental Attorney?
Yeah.
What kind of great things are you doing in California?
So my practice is mainly water pollution, preventing water pollution and preventing air pollution. So we are a plaintiff's environmental law firm. So I do plaintiff's work and we essentially sue polluters. So we mostly industrial facilities when they discharge after like a storm event, if their discharges are in exceedance of the allowable levels, we basically just sue them. And the goal is always to get them into compliance. The goal is, well, how can you make your facility more efficient so that, or not necessarily more efficient, but what kind of practices can you incorporate to prevent the pollution? You know what I mean? And so, how can we have less pollution going into our waters? And so, that's always the goal. Um, and then same with air. We represent different government agencies and help them manage their air pollution and regulations about air quality.
Oh, that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Really big one. Oh my gosh. And so what you're talking about ESG, right? Because I know you had mentioned that
No,
that's
that
not
is
part of
not
ESG.
ESG actually. No, ESG is not part of my practice, like of law, but I do a lot of legal writing in journals about ESG, and I speak as a guest lecturer for like universities about ESG because it's a topic I'm very excited about. ESG, for those who don't know, is environmental, social, and governance reporting, which another way to that people refer to it is called sustainability reporting. So it's basically a company's sustainability footprint. You know what I mean? So how what practices do they have to be more sustainable? How, and then some companies will go so far as to explain how it affects their bottom line.
Hmm.
And it depends if the company is public or not. And right now, sustainability, well, this actually I don't know. Sustainability reporting has been voluntary for a very long time, and that's what the substance of my research and writing has been on it, is like, is voluntary sustainability reporting enough, or does it need to be mandatory, like prescribed by law? Because otherwise people just report their best stuff. It's not a
Right.
real picture. And if anyone's heard of greenwashing, like greenwashing can play into here because it's people are just reporting, and it, like, oil companies can look like the most environmentally friendly if they're just reporting their good things. So it can be a little bit misleading. um
Right. We gave
but
all this money to environmental causes, but after you dump millions of gallons of oil or whatever.
so it can be interesting. But recently, within like the last few years, the Securities and Exchange Commission, sorry if this is a little boring to anybody, but I'm like super hype on it. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, drafted a rule to make sustainability reporting. I think they called it climate disclosures rule, um, which is like, essentially sustainability reporting. They created a rule, they drafted a rule to make it mandatory, and it was going through the rulemaking procedures. And that's where my knowledge stops, because I don't think it got published. Oh, and I will say the Securities and Exchange Commission in their draft rule cited a paper that I wrote, which is like
That's
so
awesome.
cool. And
Congrats
so,
again. My goodness.
yeah. So I don't know if the rule ended up like turning into a rule. I don't know if the draft rule became a rule. And then also, I don't, this is like probably way too far in the weeds, but the Supreme Court of the United States came out with a ruling about administrative law rules. And I'm not quite sure how that impacted the climate disclosures rule, if it ended up becoming a rule. So, anyways, so my knowledge stops there. I'm not sure what happened after, and I need to look into it, because I'm like, I've been dying to know if this rule made it into like an enforceable rule and out of the draft stage, and that I just don't know. But I'm a I really like sustainability reporting. I think it can be a useful tool for companies to use to showcase their sustainability landscape. I don't know if right now it's the best, but it's definitely better than nothing. And the fact that companies are even thinking about sustainability within their businesses,
Mhm.
I think is a good sign. And as like people who are passionate about the environment, like we should, you know, email them about stuff.
Let them know what we want. Yeah,
Yeah,
why not? Why not? We've seen that it works sometimes.
exactly.
And I mean, maybe if it was not passed or whatever, maybe that's one of those beautiful no's. One of
Hmm.
those,
Yeah, maybe it'll
keep
get
her saying
stronger.
no moments. And yeah, I mean, I think that's such a cool thing that if it's voluntary, it must make them feel really good and make them look really good that they're, to the people that care about it. Like,
Mhm.
these people are making efforts for us and for them, of course, but it makes them look good because they're doing good things for the earth. I mean, you had
Yeah.
said this already, but um and we can do that as well. Like if things are, if we don't get to redeem bottles and cans or whatever, we can, email people, or we can, make sure to do other things. Like I am not throwing glass away. We do not recycle glass where I am. I am not throwing away. I am going to be so creative about how I'm using it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could if it's glass, you could I don't know how big it is, but if it's big enough, you could put plants in it, or you can make glass art. You could make wind chimes. You could make like a light fixture. You can like turn it into cool, and then you can sell it on Etsy.
I'm not
Whoa.
that creative, but I have an old olive oil bottle that I made fire cider, and it's in there in my fridge.
There
And
you
I have
go.
like an old maple syrup thing, glass I don't jug that I'm fermenting some hot sauce right now. And so when I'm drained
I love
that,
it.
it's gonna go in there. And so like, but I'm going to use a lot of olive oil, so I'm going to need to figure out a lot of things to use those bottles for. But salad dressing, and it's just like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
cannot throw them away. I in my town in Maine, they stopped doing it during COVID. Like they stopped recycling glass, and they said it's going to be better for everyone to just throw it away. And I was like, absolutely not. And the only thing that we bought in glass really was hot sauce, because I can't even imagine how that like hot sauce would like eat into the plastic after a while. The
Mhm.
plastic bottles, that just grossed me out. So I was like, it's only going to be in glass.
You could
And
also write to your like representatives, and if you I'm sure there's a lot of people like you where you live, like more than you think. Even if it's mostly not people who are thinking about the environment, I'm sure there are some. And you just have to find them and write a petition or something, and like send it to your representative. If
oh
enough
my
people
gosh,
sign.
I'm going to ask for so much advice from you. What to do now? But I'm so like on this fence. Like I've been here for 2 months. Like I'm the new kid, and I'm like, are they going to think I moved here to change them? And then they're gonna be mad
No.
at me. But at the same time, like I was telling you, my guest last week was she was like, I would totally shop at that store. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm trying to do it in a smooth way, like a little,
Yeah,
not plowing through everything, but I do have lots of ideas.
I think that's great. I would empower you to see some of them through. And I understand your anxiety, but I think people would be more responsive than you think, especially if you are presenting it in a way that can be received.
Yeah. I mean, I think I also just want to talk to everybody that I know. Like I've met some really, I'm like in tight with the farmers. And so I think that they might be like, oh, Amy, she's like, we love Amy. She buys all our stuff, and she's funding our everything by buying all our veggies. But I'd like to think that there would be a lot of support, even though I haven't met a lot of people. But like I was telling you about the like no shoulders on the roads, and the litter on the road.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna do my little quiet thing and pick up, because also, like I said, I'm literally the only person that sees it because I'm the only one that walks.
Well, here's the thing, you could create a walking club, like maybe start really from the ground up where you have a walking club that meets, or you could have like a walking club if enough people come and you find out they're fans of the environment, do like a trash pickup day. Like those are fun things for the community to do and to get involved in. And I know, not everyone in California is for the environment, even though it seems like there are compared to other places, but not everyone is. And that's okay. But, the people that are really do come together. I go to trash cleanups every so often out here, but I know there's people that put them on like once a month religiously, or consistently rather. Um, yeah, people do it. Like I would empower you to
Yeah.
build more things from the ground up. You would be surprised how many people will show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I just like right now with me, like if I pick up too much trash, I don't have any place to store it. And that's really pitiful, but it's a tiny house and it's a tiny lot. But I
You
just
don't have to do it all yourself. If people come and help, the burden's not all on you. Like you get to figure it out as a community.
yeah. I do like the idea of just, whether it has a lot of support or not, like just doing it yourself because you know it's right. And then
Mhm.
hopefully others will see that and, and support and encourage and stuff like that. I just think that there's something to be said for just taking action.
Mhm.
There's a lot to be said for that, really. But I just, gosh, you've got such great ideas. I am totally going to be in your inbox all the time.
Please, I'm happy to brainstorm stuff.
Cool. Well, careful what you offer. Because I come up short. But like I was starting to say with the hot sauce bottles, I started making my own vanilla extract. And so I would wash out the bottles, of course, and take off the labels so that they were prettier, and then put my vanilla extract in there.
Nice.
So, and
How do
then we
you
put
make
it.
your own vanilla extract?
Oh my gosh. It is the easiest thing ever.
Really?
Literally, you buy vanilla beans, you cut them down the middle, and you scrape out the seeds, and then you put the beans in a jar with vodka. That's it. You just let
Wait,
it
with
sit for like
vodka?
that's all it is. Yep. I mean,
Wait,
vanilla
vanilla extract
extract is
has
alcohol and vanilla,
in really like when you buy it from the store, it's literally alcohol and vanilla?
unless you're buying artificial,
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's
right?
so interesting.
And then you just let it sit for like 6 months. And the longer the better, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
There.
Good to know. What other things do you do personally for the environment?
Ah.
Like, what have you done since you moved there?
Since I moved here,
Yeah.
well, tomorrow I'm having solar panels put on.
Nice.
I have picked up trash on my road once. Uh,
Very good.
I just made tomato jam and
Mm-hmm.
chapter relish, and like I do a lot of canning, so I'm doing a lot of meal prep for myself. Uh, I I'm planting a food forest. That's what I'm doing. I think they're gonna hate me because I'm not gonna have a perfect looking front lawn, but I'm gonna grow things.
That's okay. I think that's awesome. When I went to school in Northern California and I volunteered at this school that had a garden in it. And the idea, and I worked for this nonprofit, forgot what they were called, but we went to different schools all over the Bay Area and taught kids the importance of like planting trees and just growing things from the ground. And so every time we went to a school, we would plant trees there. And then this one school had a garden that with all of these different vegetables. And I remember one summer the teacher who took care of it was gone for the summer. So I took care of the garden and I would go water the plants every week. And it was really cool. I like that idea of incorporating like foods and growing things where we live and in cities and having it not feel so far away and so distant.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. It's so important for kids to know where their food comes from, to know how it grows. And also, so if I'm oof, I'm a big supporter of every school having a garden, even if it's not enough garden to feed everybody, just
Mm-hmm.
to be able to have that excitement and understanding and appreciation for where food comes from, and also so that they have something fresh to eat. Because I've heard that the cafeterias and school foods they're not the best. Not
Yeah.
always.
And it also, the
It just like
access.
incorporate science and stuff like that. I had a past podcast guest, Adam, who he was a physics teacher, and he like built a garden, and he built a hydroponic garden system with his students, and they were like, this is so lame. And then things started to grow, and they were like, wait, what? That happens?
Yeah. And
But
it's not as, growing things isn't as like challenging as it seems. At first you're like, "Oh my gosh, growing your own food." I mean, I don't grow my own food, but it's just the access of it. I think it's just important for kids to understand how they can do this if they want to. It
yeah.
doesn't just because they're not living in like a place with lots of land, or even if they just grow something in a tiny little pot in their apartment, like,
Yeah.
you can do it too.
Totally. Totally. And I mean, I've had a couple of guests now that talk about container gardening. If you only have as much as your front stoop or a balcony or something like that, like you can still grow something. And just the pleasure, the appreciation that you have from eating that, or the flowers. It's all just it's so good for the soul. And I support that 100%.
Yeah.
And that's, one of the things that's one of my goals for this podcast is to be encouraging for people, because we don't all have 10-acre properties and farm animals and all this stuff, but we can all do something, like
Hmm.
pick up trash, or we can write to the government or the representatives and ask them to support something, and talk to the restaurants and stuff like that. So we don't have to take everything on, but we can take
Hmm.
something on, and we can be part of the solution.
Yeah, I really like that. I love that you talk about this. I feel like more people need to hear that, just like ideas of what they can do. And like you said, you don't have to do everything. Like, it's not on you to save the planet. But if we each do something, it's not on you individually. Like, it's not your sole responsibility to save the planet. But if we each do something collectively, it makes a really big difference. And I think people can get so caught up in, well, I'm just one person. Like, what is it really gonna do? And you would be surprised what you could do just being one person. So
Yeah.
I would empower anyone listening, you know. I hope we shared some good ideas today, and I'm sure other of your episodes have shared really good ideas too. And you can always Google things, or there's just so much that you can do, but
Yeah. And it
really
doesn't all
empower.
require money. And
It
that's,
doesn't.
that's a big thing, because I know, if you go to a store and you wanted to buy, sustainable clothing, like you're buying organic linen or, something like that, it's super expensive, and everyone
Hmm.
can't afford to do that. But we can all
Thrift
we can
shopping.
shop.
Hmm.
Yep. And we could, if you have the skill, you can make your own.
I cannot do that, but I
Same.
respect the heck out of people who can.
But, some people have that skill, not it.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is so, oh my gosh, Kenya, this is so much cool. Like, I knew that this was going to be exciting. I'm just like, I'm over the moon that this conversation went the way that it did. And I like, seriously, I want to be in your inbox, because you've got great ideas to share.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy, honestly, I love talking about the environment. It's one of my favorite things. So when I met you and I was like, you have a podcast about sustainability, let's do it.
Hey now, get me on there. Um, but so, folks, check out Thank You for Saying No podcast. And how else, how can people find you, Kenya, to learn more?
Yeah, so Thank You for Saying No is on Apple, Spotify, Amazon. You can watch it on YouTube. Subscribe if you watch on YouTube. Give us a follow wherever. You can also find us on Instagram at Thank You for Saying No. And yeah, reach out. Let me know if you like the podcast. Happy to talk about sustainability. So yeah, please listen and reach out.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Kenya. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I've learned so much, and I'm fired up right now. I'm sad that it's 9 o'clock, but I'm fired up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award-winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I find love to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me, get there from here, 'cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. We'll find a way to soothe the sickness, we'll heal the ache with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here and now I'm so far down, and mercy's bound to find me. When that state of grace has finally found me, well, there'll be music, ooh, and good friends around me, yeah. And I'll just smile through happy tears and wonder,